attack, fast fatal heart impact, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and packs. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet now. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here. And now, whenever we last left off, we had talked about the other Horsemen. We had our introductions to the Horsemen of War, Famine, and Death. And now, let us start with Pestilence. Now, this one was a bit, well, easier for me than the other Horsemen. In fact, I did somewhat think about changing them around, but for some reason I feel like this one fit better. Now, as for who the Horseman of Pestilence is, it is Tomura Shigaraki. That is going to be important, because the way I'm about to explain his new origins, or the at least way it is in this what if, will be necessary. Now, let us start with Nana Shimura. Roughly over 20 years ago, before Shigaraki was even born. We will start with his father. The day Nana gave birth to his father, she knew that she would have to hide her family, hide the man she loved, and hide her own baby. So, instead of sending him somewhere else in Japan, she took a route that would be more complicated and heartbreaking. She instructed the man she loved to take the baby and leave Japan. In fact, go to a place where they will not be found. And he did. He got onto a plane and got a one-way ticket to Ireland. A place where they will not be found. All for one, if he does try and look, well, he's going to have a whole world to search before he finds them. And he's got plenty of time. And Nana Shimura eventually faced off against All for One, eventually dying. However, she passed her torch on to All Might. And she knew that her family would be safe. And her one regret as she died was that she couldn't be there to raise her own child. Now, with that being said, Shigaraki's father, he does still grow up somewhat resenting heroes. However, it isn't because of his mother. He doesn't know about her. He grows up resenting heroes for the simple fact that he could not be one. He was born quirkless, and people ridiculed him for all of his life. However, growing up in this country, eventually he did get over it. As of other countries' 20% crime ratio, and Japan 6%, I want to say Ireland would fall within the top, well, let's say at least 9 to 11%. So at least relatively peaceful. Now, as of saying that, this is whenever, eventually, Tomura's father does meet his mother, or at least a different woman. And Shigaraki is one day born. Now, Shigaraki, whenever he is born, he does seem to be somewhat healthy. Or as it would seem. The doctors, they thought that the boy was sick. However, it is found that that's just it. He's already beginning to use his abilities. The doctors that delivered him, a lot of them did begin to get sick themselves, and find themselves coming down with illnesses. However, some of these illnesses may have passed, others lasted. Now, along with that, he was using an ability called virus mimicry. He was making it appear as he was very sick, and extensive care would have to be taken care of him, meaning that he was a bit more sheltered in his life. Now, around the time where it is him supposed to be manifesting as Quirk, he does not manifest decay. In fact, they believe that he is quirkless. However, there's the fact that he does show off other strange abilities. He shows off the abilities of being able to manipulate viruses and even biological material, meaning that he can manipulate anything made of flesh. And it's very bad. This is his secondary ability that he awakened. He actually did begin making people sicker all around him, unintentionally. His father, he eventually did one day fall ill, and it seemed like antibiotics would not help. He almost succumbed to an illness. However, he was lucky enough to be able to pull through. And there was his mother. She seemed to be alright, for the most part. However, one day she did fall ill. And eventually she did die from an illness. Or at least let's say an ailment. Something that could not be cured with antibiotics. Now, with that being said, he does go out his life somewhat like this. People usually being sick around him, or at least trying to avoid him. Along with that, he began to at least show off a bit more things. Pestilence. One day, whenever a kid was bullying him, he fought back and accidentally activated his abilities. Whenever he activated them, he accidentally gave the kid a form of, well, let's say an illness. The kid eventually did fall sick and have to go to the hospital. After that happened, it was believed that Shigaraki, well, his quirk may be a bit different. And they tried to do tests on it. The boy is quirkless. And it does show. Now, he does try and understand these things. Try and figure them all out. People ridicule him and talk about him behind his back. But even then, what can he do about it? What should he do? He cannot do very much. As his body gets stronger, he begins to manifest more of his abilities. And the area around his town is seemingly just ravaged by disease. And their crops do begin to die. A form of pest began to eat away at them. And as people moved, so did he. The entire country, or at least region he lives in, began to die out. People have illness, people starving. It was very bad. And it was thought that this was some sort of villain attack. Even after all this time. Now, eventually, Shigaraki and his father, they, well, the best way I could say it is they had a falling out. His father began to understand certain things, and he was somewhat of a Well, he wasn't very religious, but after his mother's death, he began to at least turn to the Bible and read it. The more he began to look into religion, the more he began to understand some things. And he himself had a crazy theory. His theory did not add up sometimes. Other times it made perfect sense. His sickness, his disease, and why his son seems to, well, miraculously survive some illnesses that he can come down with. Other people think he might be, as I believe it's called, a hypochondriac. They will fake diseases in order just to get attention. Now, with that being said, this is whenever his father does decide to somewhat take things into his own hands. He is, well, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, seemingly just trying to take care of his boy, himself, and still trying to pay off his mother's hospital bills. And he decides to leave Tomura somewhere. As he does so, he does actually go to leave the country. He's going to get as far away from his son as possible. Maybe then he will be fine. However, while he does that, he takes more medicine and takes a drink. Now, as he drives off, eventually Tomura is found. Hours later, the boy just sitting on the side of the road and crying. Not really too sure as to what to say, let alone what to do. Left alone and afraid. He's not very certain as to why his father left him. And he is eventually taken to an orphanage. Now, they do eventually find his father's car, and it wasn't very good. His father, mixing prescription pills and alcohol, he eventually drove off the side of the road, and they found his car, well, it wasn't a very good sight. Whenever he was going down a winding road, he drove off, and they believe that they found him in the, well, what's the right way to say it? The ravine below, I believe. It's a very open area, but he would have smashed through the rocks and everything on the way down, and it's close by the water. Anyways, now, Tomura does eventually receive news of his father's death, and there is what he's doing today. At the age of 9 years old, roughly around 3 to 2.5 years after his father died, he is in school. And he is trying to focus on his studies. Along with that, there's the fact that within the orphanage, or the church as I believe it would be called, he does actually learn some religion from the nuns and study the Bible a little bit. They have been giving him teachings and helping him out on what he needs to do. And whenever he is actually messing around with his necklace and writing some things down, he feels something and stares off in a direction. As soon as he does that, he just stands up and walks over to the window. And he just stares. Eventually, the teacher does turn around. And after sitting down the chalk, does actually try and instruct Shigaraki to simply sit back down in his seat. And he does not listen. Something is calling for him, and something wailed out in pain, in anguish. Something is hurting. He cannot tell what it is. He can just tell that it wants his attention. It needs his help. It is out there. And after some time, eventually Shigaraki is snapped out of it. Now, that was Melissa's shield. Whenever she had the guy fall off the Ferris wheel and he died, she cried, and her pain was felt. Someone felt it. And it was because the island, Island, with it being mobile, it was closer to Ireland at the time. It was at least closer than it was to any other country. Now, with that being said, Shigaraki does actually eventually go home and begin to pray and learn a bit more, trying to understand his life. Now, with that being said, I do believe that I can leave this part off of here. And I do hope you guys enjoyed. And have an amazing day. I'll catch you guys in the next part.